She had always moved through life as if she were a shadow, quietly stepping around people, careful not to take up too much space. In the office, she often felt invisible, her ideas overlooked during meetings while louder voices filled the room. At home, she was the one who tidied up the clutter without being asked, who made small sacrifices quietly, without anyone noticing. Even among friends, she felt like she existed on the edges, her thoughts and feelings often unspoken, her presence barely acknowledged. For years, she wondered if people even saw her at all. Every morning, she woke early, preparing for the day with precision and care. She liked the quiet hours before the world became loud, when she could think, plan, and just exist without interruption. She brewed her coffee slowly, savoring the warmth of the cup in her hands, letting the steam rise to her face. Those mornings were her small moments of peace, and she clung to them like a lifeline. Outside, the city stirred to life, oblivious to her quiet routines. To the outside world, she might have seemed ordinary, nothing remarkable, and she feared that might be all she would ever be. Her job was demanding. She worked in a field dominated by people who seemed to exist in a world of confidence and authority. She had joined because she loved the work, because the challenge excited her, but the culture often left her feeling small. She was meticulous, careful, and thorough, but in meetings, her suggestions were sometimes dismissed or ignored. At times, she wondered if her presence made any difference at all. She could see the nods, the polite smiles, the gestures that suggested people were listening but not really hearing. She tried to speak louder to assert herself, but the effort felt awkward and foreign. She was quiet by nature, and the world seemed to reward the opposite. At night, she reflected on her days, thinking about what had gone unnoticed. A project she had completed flawlessly, a problem she had solved quietly, a colleague she had helped without anyone knowing. These were her victories, but they left her with a bittersweet feeling. She wished someone would notice, but she had learned not to expect it. Sometimes she felt like she was living in two worlds, one where she existed and one where she was invisible. The invisible world was safe but lonely, the visible world intimidating but full of possibility. She longed to bridge the gap between the two. Her friends encouraged her in small ways to speak up more, to be seen, to demand recognition. They didn't understand how exhausting it felt just to exist in that space. Every word she said in meetings required effort, a careful weighing of how it might be received. Every glance from a colleague made her analyze whether she was being judged unfairly. She had learned to move through life with caution, to observe before acting, to measure each step. It had become second nature, a survival skill, but one that often left her feeling isolated. Despite it all, she had dreams. Big dreams. She imagined herself excelling in ways she had never yet dared to try. She wanted to prove to herself that she was capable of more than being overlooked, more than being quiet. There was a fire inside her, hidden beneath layers of doubt and self-restraint, and she fed it in small ways. She read voraciously, learning everything she could about her field, about people who had succeeded against the odds. She practiced skills in secret, honing her talents when no one was watching. Each small step built her confidence, even if no one else saw it. One day, an opportunity arose that would begin to change everything. It started as a routine assignment, something she could do quietly without drawing attention. She worked late, reviewing documents, double-checking procedures, ensuring every detail was perfect. The task seemed ordinary, almost invisible, but she approached it with the same meticulous care she always did. She could feel her heart beat faster, a mixture of excitement and fear. What if this time someone noticed? What if this time her efforts made a difference? As she worked, she thought about all the times she had been overlooked. She remembered the meetings where her voice was drowned out, the presentations where her ideas were credited to someone else, the casual dismissals that left her stomach tight with frustration. Those memories fueled her determination. She decided that this time she would not let her work vanish into the background. She would leave a mark, even if it was just a small one. She focused entirely on the task. Every line, every calculation, every detail perfect. She worked late into the night, fueled by a quiet but intense determination. The next morning she submitted her work and waited, heart pounding. She tried not to think about how it would be received, but she could not stop herself. Hours passed, and then a message arrived from her supervisor. They praised her work, noting the precision and care she had taken. Her heart leapt at the words, but she quickly tempered her excitement. It was just one moment, she reminded herself. One small acknowledgement did not erase years of feeling invisible. Still, it was a start. Still, it was proof that her work mattered, even if only to a few. That evening, she reflected on the experience. She realized that recognition, while important, was not the only measure of her worth. She had completed something meaningful, something she could be proud of regardless of who noticed. That thought comforted her, and yet, a part of her longed for more. She wanted not just acknowledgement but validation on a larger scale. She wanted to see the world recognize her not for one task, but for all the quiet persistence, skill, and dedication she had carried throughout her life. She began to imagine what it would be like to step fully into the light, to be seen for who she truly was. She imagined a moment when her voice could no longer be ignored, when her contributions could not be dismissed. It was a terrifying thought because stepping out of invisibility meant taking risks, and risks had always frightened her. But it was also exhilarating. The possibility of finally being recognized for her abilities gave her a thrill she had never felt before. In her personal life, she started taking small steps too. She spoke up more in conversations with friends and family, asserting her opinions and making decisions she had once let others make for her. It felt awkward at first, like stretching muscles that had long been unused. But each time she spoke and was heard, she felt a surge of confidence. She realized that invisibility was not permanent. It was a state she had tolerated, but she had the power to change it. She could step forward, even if only a little at a time. The world outside her home and office remained fast-paced and loud, full of people who seemed to dominate every room they entered. Yet she began to navigate it differently. She learned to choose her moments, to prepare herself, to make her presence felt without forcing it. She discovered a quiet power in her careful observation, her thoughtfulness, her attention to detail. What she once saw as a weakness, being quiet, being reflective, she now saw as a strength. She could act with precision and purpose, and when the time came, her impact could be unmistakable. Despite these changes, she still carried the old fear of being invisible. It lingered like a shadow, reminding her of the years she had spent unnoticed. But she began to see the fear as a signal, not a limitation. It was a reminder that she had a choice, to remain unseen or to step forward and claim her place. She began to look for opportunities where her skills could shine, where her efforts could leave a mark. She knew it would not be easy, that she would face obstacles and doubts, but she also knew she had grown stronger. One quiet afternoon, she received a call that would set the next chapter of her life in motion. It was an assignment that required not just skill, but courage, initiative, and the ability to act under pressure. The details were complex, the stakes high. For the first time, she felt a thrill of fear and excitement combined. This was not an ordinary task. This was an opportunity to make her presence undeniable. She knew that how she handled it could change how she was seen, perhaps forever. As she prepared for the challenge, she reflected on her journey. She had come a long way from the quiet, invisible woman she had once been. Each small victory, each act of persistence had built her confidence and skill. She understood that being seen was not about changing who she was, but about embracing her abilities and allowing the world to recognize them. She was ready to take the first real step out of the shadows, and she could feel the weight of possibility pressing against her chest in a way that was both terrifying and exhilarating. She walked into the next phase of her life with a mix of caution and determination. She did not know exactly what awaited her, but she felt a quiet certainty that her time to be noticed was approaching. For the first time, she did not feel invisible. She felt like someone who had been waiting patiently, honing her skills, building her strength, and now finally was ready to step forward and be seen. And in that moment, she realized that being invisible had taught her something valuable. It had taught her patience, focus, and resilience. It had given her a depth of skill and understanding that those who had been in the spotlight from the start might never know. She smiled quietly to herself, knowing that her moment would come. And when it did, it would not be small. It would be powerful, undeniable, and it would make history in ways she had only begun to imagine. She took a deep breath and stepped into the office that morning, feeling a mix of nerves and determination. The task she had been assigned was unlike anything she had faced before. It required precision, quick thinking, and the ability to remain calm under pressure. She knew this was more than just another assignment. It was a chance to prove to herself and maybe to the world that she mattered. She wanted to show that the quiet, overlooked woman could perform with excellence. and perhaps even leave a mark that could not be ignored. Her first hours were spent gathering information, studying procedures, and preparing herself for every possible scenario. She moved carefully, double-checking every detail, making notes, and rehearsing in her mind how she would handle the challenges ahead. As she worked, she felt the familiar tug of self-doubt, the quiet whisper that reminded her of all the times she had been invisible. But this time she did not allow the doubt to dominate her thoughts. Instead, she focused on what she could control: her effort, her preparation, and her attention to detail. In the midst of her preparation, a colleague approached her. He was well respected in the office, known for his experience and skill. Most people would have felt intimidated by his presence, but she greeted him with calm courtesy. To her surprise, he offered guidance, not in a condescending way, but as someone who genuinely wanted to see her succeed. He reminded her that she had the ability to handle this, that her work and her dedication had already proven her capable. She listened carefully, taking in his words, and for the first time felt the warmth of recognition that was neither forced nor fleeting. As the day progressed, she faced her first real challenge. A sudden complication arose, something she had not anticipated, a problem that required an immediate decision. She felt her heart rate increase and her stomach tighten, but she reminded herself of the hours she had spent preparing. She focused, analyzing the situation calmly and logically. She considered her options, weighing each one carefully, knowing that her choice could have consequences. She made a decision and then acted on it with steady hands and a clear mind. The result was immediate. The complication was handled successfully, and her quick thinking prevented what could have been a serious setback. She felt a surge of confidence, a quiet joy that came from knowing she had done well, and yet she noticed that the recognition around her was subtle. Her colleagues nodded, a few offered polite praise, but the magnitude of her success seemed invisible to most. She felt a familiar pang of disappointment, but it was different this time. The satisfaction came from within, from knowing she had risen to the challenge and proven herself capable. As the day turned into evening, she received a message from her supervisor. They wanted to meet her privately. Her heart skipped a beat. She walked to the office nervously, unsure what to expect. When she arrived, she found her supervisor smiling warmly, acknowledging the excellent work she had done. They praised her for handling the complication with skill and foresight, and noted that her contributions had made a significant difference to the project. For the first time, she felt a recognition that went beyond polite acknowledgement. It felt real, meaningful, and validating. Walking back to her desk, she reflected on the events of the day. She realized that recognition was important, but what mattered even more was her own awareness of her abilities. She had prepared meticulously, faced challenges, and made decisions under pressure. She had acted with skill and intelligence. She had proven to herself, more than anyone else, that she was capable, and yet the thought of being recognized by others, of being truly seen, filled her with a quiet hope she had not felt in years. Over the next few days, she began to notice a change in herself. She approached tasks with greater confidence, spoke up more during meetings, and contributed ideas without hesitation. She realized that being visible was not just about being recognized by others. It was about claiming space for herself, about allowing her presence to be felt without apology. Each small action, each decision to speak or act built her confidence and strengthened her sense of self. She was learning to navigate a world that had often seemed indifferent to her existence. She also began to notice subtle changes in how others responded to her. Some colleagues who had previously overlooked her ideas now listened more carefully. A few began to seek her input on important matters, recognizing the value of her perspective. It was not immediate or universal, but it was enough to show her that visibility was possible. She understood that being seen was a process, a journey that required patience, persistence, and courage. It was not something that happened overnight, but with consistent effort she could step into a new space where her presence mattered. Amid this growing confidence, she encountered another challenge. A complex problem arose that required collaboration with a team she had not worked closely with before. Some of the team members were skeptical of her abilities, and she sensed subtle doubts in their expressions. At first, she hesitated, feeling the old fear of invisibility creeping back. But then she remembered the preparation, the effort, and the small victories that had brought her this far. She decided to approach the situation with a clear mind and an open heart, ready to demonstrate her capabilities while also learning from others. The collaboration was not easy. Differences in opinion, conflicting approaches, and the pressure of deadlines created tension. She listened carefully, communicated clearly, and offered her solutions with confidence and tact. Slowly, the team began to see her value. Her insights were practical, her suggestions effective, and her presence stabilizing. By the end of the project, she had earned not only respect but a sense of belonging she had rarely experienced before. She realized that visibility was not about dominating a space, but about contributing meaningfully, building trust, and showing reliability under pressure. During this period, she also began to embrace her symbolic call sign. It had been given to her as part of her work, a code name meant to represent her identity and skills within a professional context. At first it felt strange, an abstract label that seemed small compared to her ambitions. But gradually, she began to associate it with her own courage, her perseverance, and her growing confidence. It became a symbol not just of her work, but of her journey from invisibility to recognition. Every time it was used, it reminded her of the progress she had made and the possibilities that lay ahead. Outside of work, her personal life reflected these changes as well. She spoke more openly with friends and family, sharing her thoughts and feelings without hesitation. She made decisions for herself without waiting for approval, asserting her independence in ways that were both small and meaningful. These changes were not dramatic, but they were noticeable. She felt lighter, more confident, and more connected to the world around her. For the first time in a long time, she experienced a sense of balance between caution and courage, observation and action, invisibility and recognition. Despite these positive developments, she remained aware of the challenges ahead. She knew that her journey was only beginning, that each success brought new expectations and responsibilities. She also understood that fear and self-doubt could resurface at any time, but she had learned to face these emotions without letting them control her. She had discovered that preparation, patience, and self-belief were powerful tools, and that courage did not mean the absence of fear, but the willingness to act in spite of it. One afternoon, she received an unexpected opportunity. A senior leader in her organization had taken notice of her work and wanted her to participate in a high-profile project. This was an opportunity that could elevate her career and make her achievements visible on a larger scale. She felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. The stakes were higher, the scrutiny greater, and the potential for failure more daunting. But she also felt a quiet thrill. This was her chance to step even further out of the shadows and into a space where her abilities could shine. She accepted the challenge, determined to approach it with the same meticulous preparation and focus that had brought her this far. She began researching every aspect of the project, seeking advice from mentors and rehearsing possible scenarios. Each step reinforced her confidence, reminding her that she was capable and ready. She also recognized the importance of mindset. She had learned that believing in herself was as critical as skill and preparation. Without that belief, even the best efforts could falter. As the project progressed, she faced moments of uncertainty and pressure, but she handled them with composure and intelligence. She made decisions that were thoughtful and effective, earning the trust and respect of her colleagues. Her call sign became more than just a label. It became a symbol of her growing authority and capability. People began to associate it with competence, reliability, and quiet strength. She realized that she was no longer invisible in the ways she had feared. Her contributions were noticed, her presence valued, and her abilities respected. The days that followed brought new challenges. She had stepped into a role that demanded not only skill but also courage, and the pressure was constant. Every task required precision, every decision had consequences, and every mistake could be magnified in ways she had not yet experienced. She had grown confident, yes, but confidence alone was not enough. She quickly realized that true growth came not only from success, but from facing the moments when she could fail and choosing to act anyway. One morning, a situation arose that tested her like never before. A critical decision had to be made, one that could affect not just the immediate project but the reputation of the entire team. Colleagues looked to her for guidance, and for a moment, she felt the weight of all those years of being overlooked pressing down on her. She paused, feeling a familiar wave of doubt. the whisper of invisibility creeping back. But she remembered the preparation, the careful work, and the small victories that had brought her here. She took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and acted. Her decision required careful communication and the ability to convince others while remaining calm under scrutiny. She spoke clearly, presenting her reasoning step by step, anticipating objections and answering them before they were raised. Some of her colleagues hesitated, skeptical at first, but her confidence was steady, her logic sound. Slowly, they began to follow her lead. She felt a sense of exhilaration, a thrill that came not from praise or recognition, but from the knowledge that she was making a real impact. She was no longer invisible, her actions had weight. That afternoon, she faced another challenge. A technical problem emerged, unexpected and complicated, requiring hours of focus and creative thinking. She dove into it, refusing to leave anything to chance. Her mind raced through possibilities, examining every angle, testing each idea methodically. Time seemed to stretch, and the room grew quiet around her as others watched, uncertain. She felt the familiar tension in her chest, but she also felt the steady pulse of determination. She was in her element, fully alive in a way that she had rarely experienced before. Hours passed, and finally, a solution emerged. It was elegant in its simplicity, effective in practice, and it solved the problem completely. Her colleagues breathed a collective sigh of relief, and some offered quiet praise. She smiled, but her satisfaction came from deeper than that. It was the sense of capability, the knowledge that she had navigated complexity and pressure successfully, that fueled her pride. Recognition from others was welcome, but the real reward was knowing she had acted with skill and intelligence when it mattered most. As the days went on, she began to notice subtle shifts in the way people responded to her. Some who had doubted her began to seek her input more frequently. Others who had been indifferent now acknowledged her presence with respect. It was not dramatic, not instantaneous, but it was enough to remind her that persistence, skill, and integrity could eventually command attention. She realized that visibility was not about forcing others to notice, but about consistently demonstrating competence and reliability, letting her actions speak louder than words. Amid these professional challenges, she continued to embrace her symbolic call sign. It had become more than just a label. It was a reminder of her journey, her persistence, and the courage it had taken to step forward. Every time it was mentioned in a meeting, every time it was associated with her work, she felt a quiet surge of pride. The call sign was a symbol of identity, strength, and perseverance. It reminded her that she had grown from the quiet, overlooked woman she once was into someone capable of shaping outcomes and commanding respect. Despite the progress, moments of self-doubt remained. She was human, after all, and fear had a way of resurfacing unexpectedly. There were times when she questioned whether she was truly ready for the responsibilities she had taken on, whether she could meet the expectations now placed on her, and whether the recognition she had begun to receive was fleeting. During these moments, she reminded herself that growth was not linear. Confidence could coexist with fear, and courage was often the willingness to act even when uncertainty remained. A turning point came when she was asked to lead a critical project with a tight deadline. The project was high-profile, complex, and full of challenges that could not be predicted. She accepted, knowing that failure was possible, but also that this was an opportunity to solidify her presence and prove her abilities on a larger stage. She spent days preparing, analyzing every possible scenario, coordinating with team members, and ensuring that every detail was accounted for. Her meticulous preparation became a shield against doubt, giving her the clarity and confidence she needed to act decisively. The project began smoothly, but soon unexpected obstacles emerged. Technical issues, conflicting opinions, and unforeseen delays tested her patience and skill. She felt the pressure mounting, a familiar tension tightening her chest. But she drew on her experience, her preparation, and her inner resilience. She adapted quickly, making decisions with care but without hesitation. She listened to others, incorporated their feedback, and maintained her own clear vision for the project's success. She discovered that leadership was not about asserting dominance, but about guiding, adapting, and maintaining steady focus amidst chaos. One evening, after a particularly challenging day, she stayed late to ensure everything was on track. She looked around the office, empty and quiet, and reflected on how far she had come. She thought about the years when she had felt invisible, the moments of self-doubt, the times when her contributions had gone unnoticed. And she realized that those experiences had prepared her for this moment. Her invisibility had taught her patience, her quiet nature had taught her observation, and her persistence had taught her resilience. What once felt like weakness had become a source of strength. As the project progressed, she earned the respect of the entire team. They began to rely on her judgment, to trust her decisions, and to recognize her unique strengths. Her call sign, once a symbol of potential, now represented tangible accomplishment. People began to associate it with reliability, intelligence, and quiet authority. She had stepped fully into a space where her presence mattered, where her skills could not be ignored, and where she had begun to make a lasting impact. Despite this growing recognition, she remained humble. She understood that visibility was not about ego or self-importance, but about responsibility and contribution. She sought to lift others, to share knowledge, and to support those around her. She discovered that the true power of being seen was not in accolades, but in the ability to influence, guide, and inspire through action. Each small success became a building block for larger achievements, and she approached every task with focus, care, and integrity. One day, a senior leader requested a private meeting with her. She entered the office feeling a mix of anticipation and nervousness. The leader praised her work, highlighting the success of the project and the influence she had had on her colleagues. They spoke of her ability to navigate complexity, make sound decisions under pressure, and inspire trust in others. For the first time, the recognition felt complete, not just for a single accomplishment, but for the person she had become, the professional, confident, and capable woman who had emerged from years of being overlooked. Walking back to her desk, she felt a quiet satisfaction. She understood that visibility was not a gift to be given, but a space to be earned. Her journey had been long, filled with challenges, doubts, and moments of invisibility. But it had also been filled with growth, skill building, and quiet determination. She realized that her past struggles had shaped her into someone uniquely capable of handling the pressures of her current role and the responsibilities that lay ahead. In the weeks that followed, she continued to excel. She took on new projects, mentored colleagues, and refined her skills. Her call sign became synonymous with competence, reliability, and quiet authority. People sought her guidance, respected her input, and recognized her contributions. She had not only proven herself to others, but she had proven herself to the most important person, herself. She was no longer invisible, and the realization was powerful, transformative, and deeply satisfying. Yet she remained aware that her journey was ongoing. She knew that challenges would continue to arise, that expectations would grow, and that moments of doubt would return. But she also knew that she had acquired tools to navigate these challenges: preparation, resilience, focus, and the courage to act despite fear. Each day she became more confident in her abilities, more assured of her presence, and more ready to face the future. One quiet evening, as she reflected on her journey, she thought about the moments that had brought her here, the years of being overlooked, the challenges she had faced, and the small victories that had built her confidence. She realized that invisibility had taught her patience, skill, and the value of quiet strength. She understood that being seen was not about shouting or demanding attention, but about acting with integrity, competence, and courage. And as she looked toward the future, she felt a sense of anticipation, knowing that her next steps could lead to achievements even greater than she had yet imagined. The day of the big project arrived, and with it, a mixture of excitement and tension that filled the air. She woke early, her mind racing through every possible scenario, every detail she had prepared for. She dressed carefully, moving with quiet determination, aware that this day could define not just her current work, but how she would be seen in the future. The project was high-profile, challenging, and demanding in ways she had not yet experienced. For weeks she had prepared, anticipating problems, rehearsing solutions, and visualizing success. Now everything rested on her actions. As she entered the workspace, she felt a familiar surge of adrenaline. The room was busy with people moving quickly, checking equipment, discussing strategy, and preparing for the tasks ahead. Her call sign, once a quiet symbol of identity, now carried weight. It was a name that others recognized with respect, associated with reliability, competence, and calm authority under pressure. She could feel its presence within her, a steady reminder of how far she had come from the quiet, overlooked woman she once was. The first stage of the project demanded precision and quick decisions. She moved confidently, analyzing each situation, coordinating with team members, and offering guidance where needed. Every action was deliberate, every decision carefully weighed, yet she acted without hesitation. There were moments of uncertainty, sudden challenges that required immediate solutions, and she faced each one with focus and skill. Her colleagues began to notice the ease with which she navigated difficulties, the calm assurance in her voice, and the clarity of her decisions. For the first time, she felt the kind of recognition that went beyond words. It was in the way people responded to her, trusted her judgment, and followed her lead. As the hours passed, the project grew more complex. Unexpected complications emerged, testing her patience, creativity, and resilience. At one point, a critical issue arose that could have derailed the entire operation. Others panicked or hesitated, but she took a deep breath, recalling all the preparation and experience that had brought her here. She assessed the problem, considered possible solutions, and acted decisively. Her plan worked, resolving the issue efficiently and preventing what could have been a major setback. The sense of accomplishment was immediate, but she also noticed the growing respect in the room, subtle but undeniable. During a brief pause, she took a moment to observe her surroundings. She saw colleagues she had worked with for years looking at her differently now. Their expressions held admiration, trust, and a quiet acknowledgement of her abilities. She realized that this moment, this intense experience of responsibility and success, was transforming not just her career, but her identity. She was no longer invisible. Her actions had made a difference, her voice had been heard, and her presence had mattered. The feeling was exhilarating, and yet she remained grounded, focused on the tasks ahead. The most critical phase of the project approached, requiring coordination, precision, and clear communication under intense pressure. She felt her pulse quicken, but she also felt a quiet confidence. This was the moment she had been preparing for, the moment where her abilities could shine fully. She guided the team with clarity, ensuring that each step was executed correctly, anticipating potential problems before they arose, and providing solutions quickly. Her presence steadied others, giving them confidence in her leadership and judgment. One particularly challenging moment tested everything she had learned. A sudden complication threatened to undo hours of work. She could feel the tension in the room, the uncertainty of her colleagues, and the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. But she did not panic. She assessed the situation methodically, consulted her notes, and made a decision. It was a calculated risk, one that required courage and conviction. She acted swiftly, implementing her solution with precision. Slowly, the tension eased as the problem resolved, and the team breathed a collective sigh of relief. Her confidence and skill had turned a potential disaster into a triumph. Throughout the project, she noticed the subtle ways people responded to her call sign. When it was mentioned, there was a sense of acknowledgement, an unspoken respect that had grown from months of consistent effort and demonstration of skill. Her call sign was no longer just a code. It was a symbol of her presence, her courage, and her competence. Each time it was used, she felt a surge of pride, not in arrogance, but in recognition of the journey she had traveled from invisibility to influence. By the afternoon, the project reached its final stage. The culmination of hours of preparation, skill, and determination was at hand. She felt a quiet excitement, a thrill that came from knowing she had faced every challenge, adapted to every obstacle, and guided the team through complexity with clarity. Her focus was absolute, her actions deliberate, and her confidence unwavering. Every detail was accounted for, every contingency prepared, and every decision executed with care. When the project was successfully completed, there was a moment of quiet celebration. Colleagues expressed admiration, acknowledging her leadership, skill, and composure under pressure. The sense of recognition was profound, not just for the work completed, but for the person she had become. Her call sign, once a small symbol of identity, had now taken on historic significance. It was associated with capability, courage, and the quiet authority she had earned through months of persistence and effort. She felt a mix of emotions: pride, relief, and a deep sense of fulfillment. For the first time, she fully understood that visibility was not about being loud or demanding attention, but about consistent excellence, courage under pressure, and the willingness to act even when fear was present. She had stepped out of the shadows, proven her abilities, and claimed her place in a world that had once overlooked her. As the evening settled, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. The quiet years of being unnoticed had not been wasted. They had taught her patience, observation, and resilience. The small victories, the moments of preparation, and the careful attention to detail had built a foundation that allowed her to succeed when it mattered most. She realized that her past struggles had shaped her into someone uniquely capable, someone who could face intense pressure with calm determination and inspire confidence in others. Her supervisor approached her, their expression full of pride. They praised her work, noting not only the success of the project but the manner in which she had led, adapted, and guided the team. It was recognition that went beyond words, reaching into the very essence of her growth and achievement. She felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that she had not only succeeded in completing the project but had also made a lasting impression on those around her. That night, as she returned home, she felt a sense of peace mixed with exhilaration. She understood that this moment was a turning point. Her call sign, her work, and her actions had made history, not in a public, flashy way, but in a real, meaningful way that reflected her courage, skill, and perseverance. She had moved from invisibility to recognition, from doubt to confidence, and from quiet persistence to historic achievement. She knew there would be challenges ahead. Success brought new responsibilities, higher expectations, and the constant need to prove herself further. But she also knew that she had the tools, the experience, and the inner strength to face whatever came next. Each obstacle, each decision, and each victory had prepared her for this moment, and she was ready to continue moving forward with confidence and purpose. In the days that followed, her story began to spread quietly through the organization. Her call sign became more than a label. It became a symbol of excellence, courage, and determination. Colleagues who had once overlooked her now sought her advice, valued her opinion, and recognized the quiet authority she brought to every task. She had not only achieved personal success but had also inspired others, showing that persistence, skill, and integrity could command respect and recognition. Despite the growing acknowledgement, she remained grounded. She understood that recognition was not an end but a step in an ongoing journey. She continued to work with focus, care, and humility, knowing that her actions spoke louder than any words of praise. Her call sign, a symbol of her historic achievement, reminded her daily of the path she had traveled, from invisibility to influence, from doubt to confidence, and from quiet persistence to making a real difference. Reflecting on the experience, she realized that her journey had taught her more than skill or recognition. It had taught her the value of patience, resilience, and self-belief. She understood that being seen was not about external validation alone, but about embracing one's abilities, acting with courage, and allowing the world to acknowledge the effort, talent, and dedication that had always been present. She had discovered the power of quiet strength and the importance of claiming space for herself in a world that often overlooked those who moved quietly but deliberately.